welcome to our webinar with our awesome friends over at Sisu. The title of this webinar was Streamline Your Process from Lead to Contract to Close with Zero Duplicate Data Entry. And what sort of inspired this topic is a conversation that I was having with a colleague of mine, and this whole concept that, me personally, I hate looking at spreadsheets. And when you talk about realtors and managing our databases and how we store that data, how we share that data, how we analyze that data, and you look at the entire process, like you zoom out and you look at the process, it can be really so very discombobulated. And that's a problem, because when it is, it makes it difficult to make decisions or like to discern the data. You're really just creating more work for yourself. And you're taking the focus less on, the business decisions that you need to make that are going to drive revenue. And you're spending more time trying to analyze and make heads or tails of this data. And that's a problem. So that's some of what we want to talk about today on the webinar. Before we kind of get started and I hand it over to Zach, I just want to go through some quick housekeeping items with you because this always comes up. But yes, this webinar is being recorded. Just sit tight. If you registered or you have to leave early, no problem. We're going to send you a copy of the recording once it's ready. So you'll automatically get that in your email inbox. Just keep an eye out. And if any of this seems overwhelming, I really do want to emphasize, don't worry about it. It's totally fine. We have awesome support teams that are here to help you. Kind of, if you're stuck, just send me an email. Ricardo, all of this sounds awesome. How do I get it implemented? Just shoot me a note and we'll point you in the right direction. So don't worry about it. We're here to help. If you do have any questions, any technical questions, here's what I want you to do. Continue using that chat that's provided in your Zoom chat panel. I'll be able to get through some of those questions. And then we have Francis from Sisu's team. We're just going to make note of all of those sessions. If it's something that we don't get to on the webinar today for some reason, or if it's a super technical questions, we'll just direct those to our support teams, because we have 7-day-a-week support. We'll be able to answer those questions. They'll be able to answer those questions quicker and get you moving in the right direction, because we want to make sure you're feeling good about everything that we're doing and that your systems are working. So don't sweat it. No question is too small or silly. We'll be totally fine. Just go ahead and send those in and we'll go from there. So 1 second. Looks like want to make sure everyone can't see my screen, which is a problem. And thank you, Francis. All right. Show of hands. Give me a thumbs up. You guys can see my screen now. We're good to go, right? Awesome. Game on. Let's party. So what are we going to cover on the webinar today? So, all right. Thumbs up. We're good to go. Sorry about that, guys. So here's what we're going to talk about today. The average Sisu and FUB client is able to eliminate at least 2 to 5 duplicate systems in their business. Things like Google Sheets, things like Google Forms, Trello, and Asana. And then the other thing that I want you to think about is the average team enters the same piece of information at least 2 to 3 times into a CRM, into a tracking spreadsheet, and then again into their transaction management software. And that's the stuff that I'm saying can get super repetitive. And how can we eliminate those steps in your process? The other thing that we're going to look at is lead source ROI, so that you can quickly see where your investments are paying off and where they're not. This is the thing that I think on an ongoing basis, we should be able to see once per month, once per quarter, how long is it taking for a specific lead to go from lead to close? Because then we can look at bottlenecks in our business. And then the tracking data that you're able to get out of Sisu, you can hold sales contests. You can start to make look at your data on a monthly, quarterly basis, so that you can assess, is something working or something not? If something's working, let me double down on that side of the business, right? So all of those sorts of things. So for those of you that don't know me, you've been getting my emails, et cetera, my name is Ricardo. I'm one of the trainers here at FollowUp Boss. I host a lot of our webinars. I'm just a 10-year veteran of the industry. It's amazing how time flies, and I geek out on all of this stuff. So when it comes to marketing, automation, and sales, I'm the guy that likes to think high level strategies and sort of geek out on some of these things. So let's kind of jump in, and then I'll hand the controls over to Zach. But like I said at the beginning, you know, what sort of prompted this conversation? For me, it was this conversation of, you know, do you hate spending hours on end looking at spreadsheets? For me, the answer is yes. I know how tedious it can be to have to look at a spreadsheet each and every single day. At some of my previous jobs where I managed like real estate offices, and I managed our lead flow, and it was my job to pass leads to our agents to get them from lead to close. It's tedious spreadsheets. I'm just not, like, my brain doesn't work that way. I want data. I want to be able to look at data and for that data to be actionable so that I'm wasting less time trying, again, to discern the data, just so that I can make a decision and act on the data, right? That sort of stuff is important to me. So the good news is that with Sisu and FollowUp Boss, you'll never have to look at another spreadsheet again, unless you really like looking at spreadsheets. With Sisu, all of your numbers will be sort of in one central place automatically and updated for you, so that there's no more of this having to re-enter numbers that are already existing in your CRM, or for you having to manually sort of update those numbers yourself. And my whole premise is that if you do this and you do it well, you'll be just completely surprised at the amount of time that this saves you, and just how effortless it makes it for you to run your business. So with that said, I kind of want to hand it over to Zach. He's the director of sales over at Sisu. Sisu's first sales and marketing hire. I'll let him tell you a little bit more about his background, but like me, I'd say that he's pretty passionate when it comes to everything real estate, marketing, technology, big proponent on leverage and how to leverage yourself in this business. That's something that you'll hear me talk about a lot as well. And apparently, Zach, I'm laughing at this one. You can jump over your wife on a wakeboard and you have photo evidence to prove it.
Yeah, I do. My wife always makes fun of me because I like to pull up this picture whenever I can. It's right there. It's like my claim to fame.
So funny.
But like, why have a cool picture if you're not going to show it off, right?
The controls are yours.
I am very passionate about this, Ricardo, and I actually see this in you too. You leverage technology to create that progress, and I think that progress is what we're all after, because it creates that deep fulfillment, right? So I get really excited about this stuff, and always loved working with you. So thanks for having us on today. That's gonna
awesome,
be fun.
man, for sure. Go ahead and share your screen, and it's all yours.
Yeah, I'll pull this up. Let's see. Thumbs up. Seeing my screen? Okay, so roadmap to this part of the presentation, right? 3 parts. We're talking about the 2 big bets that investment that the VCs and is being made in this industry as far as innovation goes. We'll go through 2 lead to close processes, and these processes are like night and day, and I think it'll be very clear how different they are and how much they can be improved. And they're actually real processes that we've helped clients. We're taking real examples from clients who had the first process and they were able to move to the second process and what that did for them. And then we'll go into the 3 approaches to actually tying FollowUp Boss and Sisu together, right? So there are different ways to do this integration. It's one of the great things about FollowUp Boss and about Sisu is we both have super powerful APIs, which means they're flexible. There's 100 ways to integrate these systems, right? And you have all kinds of options. So we'll go deep on those. I'll actually share the actual systems and how they're working, all right? So let's talk about this first point. There are billions and billions of dollars flowing into this industry from venture capitalists, the portals, the teams themselves, the brokerages themselves, and there's really 2 main bets being made, right? Some are betting against the agent and against the agent's process, and the others, the smart ones, are betting on the agent. They're betting on these teams, and specifically, they're betting on these teams who have these proven streamlined processes, right? Who are more efficient and effective. So it's not betting on all of the agents, it's betting on this top 10% who are really able to leverage themselves and technology, right? And so the biggest risk of all, the biggest risk you can take is not innovating, is not stepping into these technologies and really leveraging them and building those streamlined processes, right? Which is exactly what we're going to talk about today. How do FollowUp Boss and Sisu connect together to create a streamlined process from lead to close, right? How does that eliminate duplicate entry into spreadsheets, into Google Forms, right? And how does it save, like literally saving hundreds of man hours here, right? But the biggest thing is when you have that streamlined process, it creates a foundation of stability and lets you get more creative, right? When you don't have to spend an hour each day typing data into a spreadsheet, right? You start having fun with your business, right? You can start getting creative, getting innovative, maybe taking a little risk here and there because you have this solid foundation, right? Cool. How we doing, Ricardo?
Doing awesome. I'm laughing, or I'm grinning over here because at one of my previous roles, I used to literally carve out about a day and a half to input data into an Excel spreadsheet to talk about, like, share my numbers for the month. And then, like, think about a day and a half, that's 8 hours a day, and then probably another 4 to 5 hours the next day. It was the most cumbersome and tedious thing that I had to do once a month, every month in my business.
It's brutal, cumbersome. I call it soul sucking, right? It just like sucks the life out of you. And it's true because how can you have this space for innovation and creativity when you're so overwhelmed with these manual redundant tasks, right? So, all right. So what does this streamlined process look like? Let's start with the first example where we see all the time and that we help clients overcome the not so streamlined state, right? So everything starts as a lead, and FollowUp Boss does an amazing job of consolidating, making it really easy to pull all of your leads into your CRM, right? Whether that's from a portal, Zillow, pay-per-click, your website, like from your phone, like all these ways that leads get in. This part of the process is amazing. And when it gets into the CRM, right, Ricardo, you guys have action plans, you have automated emails, drips, e-alerts, like all of this is so streamlined and automated, right? It's where kind of the next step of this process is you've nurtured the lead, you've created the business, you've set the appointment, and now there's this handoff. And this is where we start to see a little bit of friction is how does the agent on my team, or if I work, I'm an agent and I work with like an admin TC, how does that handoff happen where I take this transaction or this lead that's already in Sisu, it's now time to transact, and I need to pass that to my transaction coordinator so that we can basically take this transaction to close, right? So all the time we see Google Forms, which actually Google Forms are pretty good. Like forms are a great way to make this handoff, right? Because you can set all of the fields that need to be entered. You can make certain ones required. So if I hit submit and I'm missing a required field that the TC needs to take this thing contract to close, it's going to give me a little red alert and I'm going to fill in that field. So actually a really good process. What's not awesome about it is half the data going into this form is already in FollowUp Boss, right? The first name, the last name, the email address, the date that they registered on my website, like that's already in FollowUp Boss, right? So good process. Forms are amazing, but re-entering data from the CRM into the form is not amazing. So that's why little red arrow here, because it requires that data re-enter, right? And then we see that, okay, this form comes through, it goes to my TC, and my TC has a checklist, right, of all the things that need to happen, contract to close for this new transaction. And they put it into another good, Trello's a great system for managing tasks and visually seeing where each transaction is at, right? And it's not just Trello, it's not just Google Forms, right? You might have Wufoo Forms, you might have Cognito Forms, you might have Trello, but it might be Asana, it might be Monday.com, it might be another transaction management system. But having to take this data from this form and re-enter it into like a Trello, right? And then the issue compounds because Trello doesn't do reporting. So the data that's in Trello, this transactional data, when did it close? How much did it close for? That data is gold. That is like the most important data for managing your business, managing your agents, right? And it's in a system that can't report on it or it can't report on it well enough. So what do? Here's your favorite thing, Ricardo. You got the spreadsheets, right? So same data that was in FollowUp Boss is re-entered into this into the intake form, it's re-entered into Trello, and now we're putting it into a Google Sheet because look, you don't like, you might not like spreadsheets, Ricardo. I actually really like spreadsheets. Like I kind of have a sickness there. Like I think they make sense to me, but what I don't do is I can't. It sucks my soul away to have to re-enter data into a spreadsheet, right? And then you have data integrity issues. So we've got another part of this process. And now wrapping up this whole thing, you might be on a team that your brokerage requires a certain backend solution, right? So you might manage the tasks in Trello, but maybe your brokerage requires you to put it into SkySlope to get paid, right? So recap here. First name, last name, email, phone number, all of this data already existed in FollowUp Boss, and it's being re-entered 1, 2, 3, 4 times at least, right? So you're starting to see that there's some improvement that could be made here, right? Ricardo, we're doing good. Any questions before I jump into the solution to this?
No, we're good.
Okay, cool. So next slide here. This part of the process is great. Leads come into FollowUp Boss, nurture them, kill them, kill that follow-up process in FollowUp Boss and create the business. Now, where it changes is actually, we're still using forms. We're still going to do an intake form just like that Google form. The difference is you can tag, or there are certain ways, and we'll get into that later, of taking the data that's already in FollowUp Boss and moving it into Sisu. And now you've got a half populated form all ready to go in Sisu, right? So your agent is clicking from FollowUp Boss into Sisu, or your admin is clicking from FollowUp Boss into Sisu. You've got half this form already filled out, and they're just filling in blanks, right? So are we augmenting the data? Yes, but there's no reentry because we pulled as much as we could from FollowUp Boss, right? The second you submit that intake form in Sisu, we're going to kick off a contract to close task list. This is all the things like 1 day before the due diligence deadline, follow up on this, and 1 day before the financing and appraisal, send out this email. 1 day after close, ask for the 5-star review, and assigning it to the right people on your team. So that same stuff that you might have been doing in Asana, Trello, Monday.com, it's running in Sisu, right? Now, the beauty of this is Sisu has the best transactional, the best accountability reporting in the industry, right? So while your TCs are spending hours crossing T's and dotting I's and making sure every transaction is perfect and pretty in Sisu, that's all feeding into your reporting. Where if you're running that in like one of these other systems, you're not getting that reporting. That's why you have to do the Google Sheet. And here you don't have to do the Google Sheet, right? Finally, data's in Sisu. It looks great. It's amazing. Click one button, push it into your SkySlope, into your brokerage back office. You know that part of the process isn't going away. That's what your brokerage needs, right? And we're just going to take that data and push it into Sisu. All right. So to sum up, there was a question in the chat earlier. What is Sisu, right? I would say it's combining I call it like this black hole of systems that are kind of slapped together to try and solve all of these needs. We've really taken an approach to combine all of this into one place. So you've got your form, your form solution. You've got your task management, transaction management solution. And then you've got like your Google Sheet, Excel, like the reporting, right? You're taking all this and putting it into one system that's very tightly connected with FollowUp Boss, because ultimately that's where your team lives. It's where they're doing their follow-up. And you want to motivate them to actually use FollowUp Boss at a higher level because, hey, if it didn't happen in FollowUp Boss, it didn't happen. And that's going to show up in Sisu, right? So very good stopping point. I get talking way too fast. Ricardo, any comments before we kind of get into some examples?
You're good. And before we get into those examples, here's probably a good place to stop and answer some of these questions. So let me move up here a little bit. Yeah. You know how we talked about getting the data from FollowUp Boss into Sisu. So one of the questions from Michael is, do the tasks trigger into FollowUp Boss so that the agent or my assistants don't have to go into another system? So you go ahead.
Yeah, I'll actually screen share and show you exactly how that works. The tasks are being managed in Sisu, and I'll show you exactly how that looks and why it's not cumbersome to have that.
Correct. And then Stacy's asking, if you use FollowUp Boss action plans, will those translate into Sisu? And is it better not to use follow boss action plans and only one in Sisu? Just
So
to
the
be
agents,
clear.
yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the agents live in FollowUp Boss and they're doing action plans and they're not completing tasks in Sisu, right?
Correct.
The people who typically are completing tasks in Sisu are your administrative, your transaction coordinators, right? And the reason they're running these in Sisu is because these tasks are typically based on some of those dates of like the closing dates. So you might have a task that needs to be assigned to the transaction coordinator and it needs to happen 3 days before closing. And if the closing date in Sisu pushes, so does that task, it moves with it, right? And Sisu might send notifications to your agents, but your agents aren't going to have like a task load to handle in Sisu. Typically, that's what your admin's doing, and they're replacing whatever they might have been doing in any of these 3 systems with their task management in Sisu.
This is all more sort of contractual tasks. I would say that you
Yes.
might still have tasks that are part of like your 40-day, or not your 40-day, your 40 touch action plan that you have running for a year on a contact, right?
Should absolutely stay in place. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would consider those two things separate. The tasks that are getting deployed here that your like Zach said, your TCs and your admins are going to manage. Those are the ones that are living in Sisu.
Yep.
A couple more technical questions before we get into, and then we'll get to these as Zach goes through his examples. Moving from Sisu to SkySlope, does that include the documents that must go into the SkySlope system?
So that's a great question. SkySlope's API doesn't support moving those documents in yet. So it's something that we've been working on and hoping gets released soon. Typically what's happening is the transaction is actually being formed using the data in Sisu, and then those docs are being uploaded into SkySlope.
Awesome. I'll let you get on with those examples. I'm not ignoring the questions that are in here, but I'm guessing some of these questions will be answered as we get into some specific examples. So sit tight, guys. Let's keep going, and then we'll definitely get to some of these questions in the end.
Perfect. Okay, so what you have in Sisu and FollowUp Boss are 2 great API-based companies, right? And the way that I evaluate if a company is an API-based company is how much of what you can do in the interface can you do through their API, right? And the answer in both of these scenarios is a lot, which means this opens up the door to all kinds of integration, automation, connections, like the door's just kind of wide open, right? And what that ends up meaning is there are a handful of ways that you can integrate Sisu and FollowUp Boss. There are options, right? Because both companies are open and have these open APIs. So in Sisu, when you're talking about pulling data into Sisu, there's really 2 types of data. There's the activities, which are really simple. We're talking about how many calls were made, how many emails were sent, how many text messages. This little symbol stands for like the number of leads being generated, right? That kind of data is pretty simple. And we do this through a partner, they're named datalabs.re. And we have help articles and everything around this. This is actually covered in your Sisu subscription. So it is a partner of ours, but you're not paying out of pocket or extra for this integration. And this is what I recommend everybody do. It's really the only option for pulling calls, dials, texts, emails, because maybe you're doing some contests in Sisu or something like that, right? That's pretty cut and dry. Now, the other type of data is this whole idea of, I want to start a transaction from FollowUp Boss, and I want to, have that form, that intake form, how I pass the transaction to my TC. I want some of that data flowing into Sisu. And there's really a handful of ways that can happen as well. The first is tag-based. So this is actually set up through Sisu. This is my personal preference, and this is where I say everybody should start because it stays simple. I've been working with a lot of clients on this, but basically there's a set of tags, buyer appointment met, set, signed, seller appointment met, set, signed. These tags are pulling transactions into Sisu and giving you the base for that form, right? I realize this might be a little confusing right now. I'm actually going to switch over in a second here and share my screen and show you exactly what that looks like inside of FollowUp Boss, right? The other 2 options are, there's actually an embedded app through our partner Data Labs. This sits on that right-hand side of FollowUp Boss. and it can create Sisu transactions and FollowUp Boss deals at the same time. So there's some utility to that too. And a lot of people, a lot of clients prefer this, although I still recommend starting here and moving up in complexity. The third option, which this is like the most robust, but it's also going to take the most effort and the most configuration to get set up, is you can actually build custom forms into custom fields in FollowUp Boss. I really don't recommend this unless you're like have a very complex model, like even like some of our 50 agent teams, they're still loving this, right? But if you have a very complex like ISA department that has all these different rules and you're very structured there, that's where it might make sense looking into these forms. Cool. So let me switch my screen share real quick and we'll pull up the actual examples here. Okay. Share this. Okay, we're looking at FollowUp Boss now, Ricardo?
Yes, sir.
Okay, sweet. So talking about this side of things, is just using FollowUp Boss how you would expect. So if I'm logging calls, logging texts, sending emails, making calls from my phone using my FollowUp Boss number, all of that's logging in FollowUp Boss, and it's coming over into Sisu as activity data, right? So we're pulling some really cool data there and some really cool reports around that. Not a whole lot you need to know there. On this transactions integration, this tag-based one is super simple. So you can see that as early as setting an appointment, you can use these tags and it's creating a custom link right here inside of a custom field in FollowUp Boss, right? And then once it comes time, let's say I have a pending buyer and it's time to do that handoff, it's time for me to fill out that form where maybe before I filled out a Google form, right? But now I'm going to fill in, I'll just click this here. It's going to take me over to Sisu to my buyer under contract recap form. And it's going to have, again, half of this data already populated for me because we've pulled it from FollowUp Boss when those tags were added, right? So what you're asking your agent to do, or whoever fills out this form to pass it to the TC, they're just coming in and filling in the blanks and making sure that, whatever's bold, that's required. So if I try to submit this new buyer contract and I'm missing the offer reference date and I hit, submit here, it's actually going to prompt me and say, please fix this error, right? Okay, now I add in the date and it's going to let me submit that form, right? So the second this form gets submitted, based on the dates that are being submitted in this intake form, and this intake form is totally customizable how you want it, it automatically kicks off a task list that looks something like this. So this is that action plan, Ricardo, that you and I were talking about, that's very transactional, right? This is about taking this contract from the time that we got the rep C signed all the way to closing, right? And all of the tasks and notifications are being assigned to the right people. So notice how right when this thing was submitted, a bunch of tasks going to Anna that are due today, right? So maybe this is a member of my ops team or my admin team who handles certain tasks, right? Like getting this into SkySlope or checklists, documents, whatever, right? And down here, we've got more of like these end of the cycle, like confirming the settlement date and time and sending certain emails to the client, right? So all of this action plan is being generated the second that intake form is submitted, and it's using the data, the dates from that intake form. Cool. So again, if you have a process that's something like, a Wufoo or a Google form or a Cognito form, you can save a lot of data entry and really just make this nice, tight, integrated system that you can click into right from FollowUp Boss, right? And same would go for the seller side, but your seller form probably looks a little different. You probably collect different data when you take a new listing than when you put a buyer under contract, right? So that's like 95%. This is how I recommend you do this integration, right? Now the embedded app is kind of cool. It's also covered in your Sisu subscription, right? So there's no additional cost for the embedded app either. It can install right here. And rather than updating transactions through a form, you would update them through this embedded app. And what the embedded app will actually do is create a deal down below here and update the Sisu transaction. So if I want to update this appointment to say appointment met and it was met yesterday, right, it will actually go through and update this deal and the transaction back in Sisu. So there's some utility for that. I wouldn't recommend starting there. I recommend starting with the tags. Finally, some of our teams go with these custom embedded. So kind of a similar process here. The difference is that rather than using a Sisu form, you're actually using like a custom form that you're kind of building here that can do like some, I don't want to get way into the weeds on why you would want to use this process versus the Sisu embedded forms, but we do have some people who have like some very specific needs, not so much around what this form needs to contain, but what needs to happen after the form gets submitted. So it's an option. Again, I like to keep things simple. I'm a big believer that simplicity is the number one thing with these systems. So I say, go activity integration, go tag based. The Sisu team can help you set this up, and you'll be up and moving faster than with any of the other options.
And then the custom form, is that something that can be customized for your like specific brokerage needs?
Yeah, and I should clarify, the Sisu form is very customizable too, right? This buyer under contract recap form is doing the same thing. You can add custom fields, certain required fields. You can reorder these fields as well. So yeah, 100% customizable.
Awesome.
Cool. And I just recommend using the Sisu forms because they're there. It creates a more integrated process and it eliminates external systems, right?
Yep.
So cool. Okay, so let's talk about the big benefit of this, which we've already gone into, is awesome that I don't have to start from scratch on this form. Awesome that the second I submit it, it's triggering this task list, right? Well, now your TCs have something like, maybe something like this that they can come into and see. Switch over to the task list here. They can actually see, so like as a TC, it's super powerful to be able to come in here every day and say like, here's what I have overdue. Here's what's due today, right? Maybe there's some notes and documentation about how each of these tasks works, descriptions, right? So all I do is come in each day and complete my tasks or look at my task calendar and knock those out, right? You have a really nice Kanban style view of where these transactions are at, right? We actually modeled this after Trello because again, great systems just needs to be integrated, needs to be real estate specific. Agents love this because they can come in and like see where every transaction is at. So they really have that visibility into like what the transaction team is doing and when they're doing it and when it's scheduled to be done. And ultimately, Ricardo, like the biggest thing about this is by running your transactions through this system, you're getting that reporting that you were previously putting all of those hours into a Google Sheet for, and it's just here in the system by nature of you using Sisu with FollowUp Boss, right? So like look at how powerful this reporting can be. I'm going to pull up just a team dashboard here. Sec. This is an example of, hey, here's where my team is at. I'm going to switch the time range in like, one click to this month. And notice how everything's, go ahead, Ricardo.
No, I was just going to say, somebody had asked earlier that we mentioned this was a more effective way to measure your lead ROI. And can we provide an example of what that looks like? This is it right here.
Yeah, 100%. Because again, like I'm talking about all the process stuff, but what everyone really wants is like these awesome reports and dashboards and accountability, right? And what I'm showing you is that this will be here just by nature of using the system, of doing the things you're already doing, but just doing them in a slightly different way, right? So I can pull up, let's select one agent here. So when you're doing your one-on-ones with your agents and you want to see how they're at for the week or how they're pacing towards their business plan, right? Everything is goal-based and there's a bunch of pacing built into this dashboard. So, gosh, I don't know why my computer's being slow. So this agent has a goal of 400 conversations. per month, prospecting conversations, right? They're at 296 right now. This outer circle is how much time's passed in the month versus where they're at. So you can see they're well on pace to hit this conversations goal. What percentage of those conversations are turning into appointments, right? You can see they've hit their buyer appointment goal, but they're a little behind on the listing appointment goal. So this tells me that we could maybe work on some listing appointment or listing prospecting scripts or whatever that looks like, right? What percent of their buyer appointments did they sign the buyer? What percentage of the listing appointments did they sign the seller? Like it's all here just by nature of using FollowUp Boss and using those intake forms. You can get really deep into this data too of like, okay, 10 appointments set, cool. Who are they? What lead sources are they coming from? Like good. Almost all of this data we're looking at right here is coming from FollowUp Boss, just using those tags. So this is like a big leadership thing of being able to sit down with your agents, have a conversation based in reality, based on the numbers and based on their goals, right? But you can go way deeper with a lot of this reporting. So let's go into like some of that lead source
It's super
ROI
helpful to pull this up at a glance when you're sitting down to have that weekly or monthly coaching conversation with your agent.
Yeah.
Or you can look at, or you can look for bottlenecks, right? If
Yes.
a specific lead is going, it's in the lead stage for a really long time and it's not getting to like an appointment close stage for a really long time.
Yep.
It's being able to identify those bottlenecks. Like you're taking your buyer's agent and taking them to preview a lot of property. Gets to be a point where like you got to get in the stage of submitting offers. Otherwise, you're just going to take them and keep showing them property.
100%. Yep. This is getting deep into some of this lead source ROI reporting, right? So we can actually look at how many leads are being generated for each type versus the closings in the system associated to that type. There's a place in the system where you can enter actually your hard expense with that. So like an Op City lead, you would actually see the difference between closed GCI and what your team is making. And you're probably paying a referral out on these. So there's not like a hard expense, right? But if you're buying maybe pay-per-click leads, right, there would be a hard expense with that. Let's look at like last year's data. Let's test account. Right, so I can see, what I spent on a certain lead source. Here's how much we generated. Here's how much we've closed or have pending. Here's how much gross GCI, right? Here's how much gross team income after paying agents, after paying splits, after paying referral fees. Here's what we actually spent on those leads. So I have about a 50% return on this lead source, right? Which lead sources are giving me higher returns? Where should I be investing, right? And looking at that at a glance down here, we're getting a quick breakdown of where your business is coming from, right? How sphere heavy are we? How paid ad heavy are we? Like, where is this business coming from, right? All of this, every single person on this call has this data somewhere, right? And it might be spread across, their CRM, their spreadsheets, their Trello, SkySlope. Like, we're just bringing it all in one place where you can actually report on it, right? But you could go even deeper on this, right? If I'm sitting down in a one-on-one with an agent and I want to look at, let's just pull up this agent. I want to look at what leads they're getting and how well they're converting those leads, right? I could scope this thing down to see like how many leads are they generating versus what they're closing, or how many leads are they being given and what's the expense tied to these. So I can take this idea of like, I need to know what my lead source ROI is to, I need to know what my lead source ROI is for each agent, right? And I need to know which agents can convert a Zillow lead and which ones can't, because I can't keep giving those leads to agents who aren't converting them, right?
It becomes super effective.
Yes. Yep. So I can geek out on this reporting all day long. There's income reporting, there's profitability reporting. Fun one that a lot of maybe teams on this call are focused on. What's your capture rate on mortgage if you have a mortgage partner or in-house mortgage? What's your capture rate on title? Like, I'm telling you guys that all this data, you have all this data, but is it in a place where you can report on it, right? And this is why people are starting to run their full transaction management out of Sisu, because that data is gold. You can do so much with it when you have it in here, right? I guess let me see. One cool just little thing that I'll throw out too. taking this data and making it like super competitive. So let's do number of conversations over this time period, and I want to do like a leaderboard. So if you walk into the office of a lot of our Sisu teams, they've got a dashboard on like a 60-inch TV that's rotating and displaying these types of reports all day long. Right? You know how powerful that is as a salesperson? Like that is a salesperson's love language, is that recognition of seeing their name at the top of the leaderboard, right? Speaking from experience, at least, you know, for me. And what we find, Ricardo, is that the second there's a leaderboard tied to how many calls you're making, and those calls are being pulled from FollowUp Boss, guess what? Everybody's using FollowUp Boss, because if it didn't happen in FollowUp Boss, it didn't happen, right?
A team manager said to me that, you know, we have the dashboard on all the TV monitors in our office. It's a big office.
Yeah.
And he goes, the second we put up this team leaderboard dashboard, the first thing that happened was agents came up to me and said, hey, my numbers aren't right. I shouldn't be, you know, number should be further up. He's like, well, you should be logging your stuff and FollowUp Boss.
Exactly. Yeah.
We kind of make this joke, but when we describe our product at times, we often say we're Switzerland. You know, the reason we make a concerted effort to integrate with everybody and anybody is we recognize that people's tech stack changes somewhat regularly. Even if it doesn't, we want to be the one constant that doesn't change as you swap in and swap out different tools to sort of run your business. And by developing this sort of internal culture of logging your activity in FollowUp Boss, then that data can serve as your one source of truth for all of the other things that you want to do, or even your reporting here.
Yeah.
At a team level, it's a bit of a cultural shift because CRM, whether it's ours or whether it's someone else's, it's always a cultural shift. It's you're getting somebody to stop doing things the way they were doing them before and coaching them to do it this way. And we're doing it this way, not because like we want to create more work for you. It's we're doing it this way because then we can track our activity, we can report on it. And when we have that data, we can make incremental improvements on it.
Love that. That's all I had, Ricardo. So I know we have some questions, but
I actually have a ton of questions. So why don't we get through some of those before I get into to anything else? Give me 1 second and we'll chop away at some of those questions.
Cool.
So a few of the questions that I think these are sort of easy to hand off, but how do we set up and customize a lot of this stuff? Is there a webinar for that?
Yeah.
You guys have why don't you describe your onboarding process a little bit so that people know this isn't something you have to worry about customizing and setting up yourself?
Yeah. So a lot of the like FollowUp Boss. So for example, if you come in and say, I want to do the tag-based integration, our team will actually take your API key and go in and set up those tags for you, right? And then you can start using them right away. And that's just part of the service that we offer. We do offer so there's no like setup fee to get started with Sisu. We do offer like some like professional services for people who like want to have like hand-holding throughout the entire process. That is part of what we offer too. So there's really options for everyone. If you're looking at getting started with Sisu, we would want you to connect with an account executive on our team who knows this stuff front and back, can get on a demo with you, meet with your ops team, evaluate it all, get you, and we offer a free trial. So during this trial, you're going to start to see a lot of this stuff come together.
So that it's so much better if you're not fumbling through it yourself.
Yeah, agreed.
Do the tags and forms inserted into their team accounts manually, or are they already in there? And if so, how do we customize them for our brokerage needs?
Yeah, so Sisu forms are already there. It's really just coming in and rearranging the fields and adding custom fields. The tags are not there, but we can help get them set up. And then it's the same set of tags for everyone. So it's buyer appointment set. We have it all documented. When you add that tag, it's going to put the link into a custom field, and then you can click into the Sisu form, right? So it's really just getting those tags set up and getting our team the API key so that we can set up that part of the integration for you.
So earlier you had made a comment, Zach, that's why a lot of teams are moving to have us just manage, like, be the transaction management.
Mm-hmm.
So with that in mind, is Sisu the best place to manage commissions?
Yeah. I didn't go into that. That's something that I could go very deep on, but we have what are called commission templates. So you put into Sisu that the transaction closed for 300,000, the commission is 3%, and the agent split is 50%. And then you can apply a template that says, oh, but we pay an ISA out of the team's income, and there was a referral off the top. And so you build these templates that actually get all the way down to where every single dollar of commission is going, right? And it's one click. So that's another big part of, we see too many commissions also being managed on a spreadsheet, right? And that data is gold, but it's not as reportable as it could be. So it's a great question. Yes, full commission management. If you're a team inside of a brokerage, it's going to be for your tracking purposes. But if you're like an independent brokerage, a lot of people actually generate the CDA, like a commissions document, out of Sisu, and they're sending that to title or whatever your process is. That's actually where the checks are being managed and cut, is using that document from Sisu.
Nice. That's actually really powerful.
Yeah.
Really powerful.
Well, because how can you get lead source ROI if you don't know how much your team actually
100%.
getting? You get what I'm saying?
Yeah, 100%.
Yep.
So notifications in Sisu by default are set to come from the agent on the transaction. Is there a way to change that so that when we create notifications, because even if we specify that the notification is set to go to our TC, the agent is always getting CC'd in all notifications, which can be overwhelming for them. Yeah,
so in your action plan, you can actually create, so your like contract to close plan, right? You can create a notification step. And my guess is if those notifications are going to your agent, it's because that's how they're configured. But you could configure them to go to the TC, the cooperating TC, the cooperating agent, to the client. So they can be configured to go wherever you need them to go. And you can build it as like a merge field, like, hi, first name, your closing date is closing date, and it's going to filter in all of that data. So I would talk to our support if you're trying to make that change. Maybe they can start looking at it and pointing you in the right direction. But yes, most of the time those notifications are going to your TC team.
Awesome. Keisha's asking, is there an option to push transactions that don't use the tag-based or the embedded app or custom forms? RealSync works? What was that? I guess she's wondering if there's a way to push transactions that if you're not using any of the three methods you described.
So if you're good with Zapier, you could connect Zapier. One of our partners is RealSync. They also have an integration. So there's a lot of ways to get this over. I would recommend the tags. It's the easiest. You can, of course, go into Sisu and start a form blank and not do the integration. There is an option for that, but again, the whole point is let's save some time here, right?
Keep your data consistent.
And a lot of people say, well, not all of my leads are in FollowUp Boss. Well, let's put them into FollowUp Boss so that then you can tag them and put them into Sisu, right? You're only entering it once. So
yeah.
This is an engaged audience. I'm like looking at all these chats trying to get through.
I'm trying to go through some of these. Can Sisu work with Be in Touch? Do you guys have an integration with Be in Touch?
I don't know of one off the, like an off-the-shelf integration that's ready to go. Of course, a lot of times that doesn't mean there can't be an integration, right? Again, we have an API. If they have an open API, there could be a connection made there. We have contractors. We have a ton of partners of ours who build custom integrations. And if you're savvy with Zapier, a lot of times you can make it happen through that as well. That's a good question. I saw another question about showing time, right? Showing time, same thing, right? We're not pulling data from showing time right now. Our objective is we want to be integrated with all of these systems. There's just hundreds of them. So we're, moving through them as fast as we can. A lot of times our partners can build custom integrations, or little know-how with Zapier can actually accomplish it too. So.
All right. Is there?
I would just say for anyone on this who is maybe not using Sisu, we do offer a trial, and a lot of these questions you would want to hop on a call with our account executives. So you can go to, and we'll probably get into this here as we finish up the webinar, but sisu.co/demo, right? Someone will get on, they'll spend an hour plus with you, as long as you need, to really evaluate everything, get you going on a free trial so that you can start testing all this stuff out.
So we'll keep posting your questions in the chat. Let's get into kind of pricing and whatnot and all of those sorts of things. For those of you, a lot of you are already FollowUp Boss customers. I can tell by some of the questions you're asking. Maybe a good follow-up webinar is sort of a follow-up to this is some automations and recipes for how to just automate the flow of activity in your CRM. Like, I know a few of our agents have certain automations to put a layer of agent accountability. Like I said, getting your agents to use a CRM when conditionally they haven't, because it's just kind of a difficult thing to do. It's a cultural shift to get art to log everything in a system. And I think you can leverage things like a mentor and friend of mine joked, Ricardo doesn't have ADHD, he has ADD. He suffers from ADD. And in this particular case, the acronym was just automate, delegate, or delete. So in the way I run my business, I literally try to automate, delegate, or delete steps from my process. And it's I can joke that it's because I'm lazy. But I do it because I just want to be more efficient. And for you, the realtor who's sitting in on this webinar, listening to this stuff, the thing for you is you should be doing it's HBUT, right? Highest and best use of time. It's how do you get to a point where you're doing $1,000 an hour work, not $5 an hour work? If you're still going through your day-to-day and you're doing a lot of these like sort of incremental, repetitive activities, that's $5 an hour work. The $1,000 an hour work is teeing up and going on a listing appointment, or negotiating an offer, or submitting an offer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's the $1,000 work. So leverage and growth in your business comes when you start to automate a lot of functions in your business so that you're not doing it yourself, gives you that space to do the higher level stuff. And then when you delegate and delete repetitive processes, which is kind of quite a bit of what we talked about today. So anyway, with all of that said, for those of you that are not FollowUp Boss customers, the awesome thing about what we do and our API and everything else is we're already going to integrate with all of the tools, if not a lot of them or most of them, that you're already using, including a system like Sisu's. If you're a first-time user to Follow Boss, you're new to Follow Boss, I want to learn more, how do I get started? We do have a 14-day free trial. You'll hear from somebody on an onboarding team to kind of coach you and walk you through the process of uploading your data, et cetera, et cetera. But we do offer that free 14-day free trial. On our pro and platform plans, you get a dedicated success manager, somebody like myself that'll come and audit your tech stack and really help you, give you recommendations or coach you through your integrations and dialing in your systems. That way you're not fumbling through that process yourself. And I think that can be really, really powerful. We don't traditionally offer discounts. So what we have done is if you sign up for one of our annual plans, you do get 2 months off. So instead of $69 a month, your Grow plan would come out to less than $60 per month. Instead of $4.99 a month, your Pro plan would come out to less than $420 per month. So there is some savings there if you sign up for the year up front. And like I said, we have that sort of done for you migration on our Pro and platform accounts. The other thing that you'll get is I'm a big proponent on education first. We think of ourselves as an education first company. So when you sign up for that free 14-day trial or you activate your account, you're going to get a copy of this lead conversion mastery course. We hired Dale Archdeacon. He's one of our trainers and coaches. He runs Conversion University. What you'll basically get is you'll get a full 9-module course that offers training and scripting for both you as an agent, if you're a team leader, training for both your like individual agents, and an ISA scripting for your ISAs. That way you're not fumbling with, what to say, how to say it, et cetera, et cetera. It's all neatly packaged into this one training program and is available to you. And you'll have access to that for free within FollowUp Boss University. The other thing that you'll regularly get is you'll regularly get access to Smart Inside Sales. We do twice a month training for Follow Boss customers only. And it's not just training on the product. Like I said, it's coaching and training, scripts, it's scripting and basically all of that coaching so that you are learning the business, not just the technology behind it. And I think that's super important. And then for Zach, Zach, I want to hand it over to you, but talk to us about Sisu, what that means for getting started, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so similar, like to kick this whole process off, go to sisu.co/demo. You get a one-on-one time with one of our experts who can really talk you through like all of these super in the weeds questions. Like, well, my spreadsheet works like this, and can we report on it that way? Like, we'll go deep into all of that. We offer a free 7-day trial. If you use the code FUB or just tell them that you heard about us through this webinar, our team will offer, if you go with any of those professional services, we'll get $500 off of that. And then actually a free month of service on Sisu as well, free month of subscription. So that's it, Ricardo, just that one slide, but kick this thing off, go grab a demo with our team and they'll consult you through this whole thing. Cost, I am getting a lot of cost questions, so I'll just put it out there. Our base cost is $200 a month, and then $20 per user. So if I have 5 users, I'm at $200 a month base cost, 20 per user. That puts me at $300 a month. You can bring that cost down a little bit by paying annually. And you can also, by signing up or by talking to a team and mentioning this webinar using the FUB code, you would get a free month on that first subscription period. So users are anybody who is in the system, anybody who is pulling data from FollowUp Boss. So typically it matches the number of users you have in FUB. If you have 10 users in FUB, you're typically going to have 10 users in Sisu because you need a seat for each of those users to pull the data over.
I was going to say, it's important not to just have one account because you need to port the data over from each of your users.
Exactly, right? Yeah. You know.
All right, guys, thank you so very, very, very much. You guys brought the heat with all of the questions. If you really, really, really did. If you still have follow-up questions, some of these were pretty technical. I'm going to put my email and Zach's email in the chat. I probably shouldn't, but I will. If you have any questions, something that we didn't answer, do me a favor, just send us an email. It's either a sales question or it's a technical question. We'll connect you with the right person or help docs, or we'll record a video that honestly just walks you through the process. I don't want you guys to feel like we left you hanging. Hope you got value out of today's webinar. Appreciate each and every one of you for covering an hour out of your day. And we look forward to seeing you on the next one.
That's fun, Ricardo. Thanks for having us on.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.